Oh, we're good. I think we're good. Let me check. Um, we're good. We're live, bro.
All right, sweet.
All right. Welcome to our first episode of Desert Deals. I'm Ethan Cohen, and I'll be the one of the co-hosts, and I'm here with Diego Leon.
Thank you for having me, Ethan. It's a pleasure to be on here today of our first episode ever of Desert Deals podcast. Hopefully, first of many to come, and I'm really excited for what's to come with this podcast. And hopefully, we can share a little with each other, learn a little from each other, share a little with the world, and learn a little from the world.
Yeah, I'm excited. We have a pro agent with us, Mr. Leon. Okay, and so I'm excited to pick his brain. And get some more insight on real estate, and especially if you're a new agent. Okay, like we he's been in the industry for a bit, and we want to get some information out of him so he could help you out. And yeah, I'm excited. So we have I have a few questions for you, Diego, and you know, so as like say you're a buyer, okay?
Right.
So how much money do you need to buy your first house in this market?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, Ethan, I'm very grateful for you having me again, and thank you for the praise just now. I actually did just pass my 1 year mark in real estate since getting my license, June 5th, 2024. I remember how exhilarating that moment was, and I would have never believed all of the, I don't know, I don't mean to brag, but success that it's brought. Just new problems. I think new problems are the biggest sign of change, and I'm very grateful for that. But through a year of just throwing myself into the fire and learning all this stuff, I feel like I've come to be rather knowledgeable about buyers specifically. People my age that are considering buying their first time home specifically have heard a lot from whether it's media sources, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whether it's family, friends, your uncle who bought a house. People are pretty typical to believe that you need 20% down to put on a house. I'm sure you've heard that before. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, like a 20% down payment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's typically what people tell you is essential to buy a house. And while a more significant down payment is going to lower the principal and essentially your monthly payment in any transaction, you actually need as little as 3.5% down with some first-time homebuyer programs through an FHA loan. Now, there's some considerations to take into that before you go ahead and sign a contract with me and buy your dream home, right? Is you need to be pre-qualified. That's essentially the first step in buying a home is if you're a first-time home buyer or even thinking about buying a home, like if you don't know if your job can afford it, if you don't know there's so many questions about it. Can I afford it? When can this happen for me? What home can I get? And all that starts with your first step is talking to an agent and getting pre-qualified essentially.
So how do
So
you how do you get pre-qualified? What's like talk about that? What are the steps? Like how do you proceed with that?
yeah, I think as far as getting pre-qualified, um, you have to have some sort of connection to a mortgage lender or a mortgage broker. So a mortgage lender usually represents one company and they essentially have executive access to grant this company's money and loans based on some underwriting principles, based on how much your credit score, how high your credit score is, what your income to debt ratio is, and essentially just your income and assets as a whole. So they take all those into consideration. And in just a 15 to 20-minute phone call, they can tell you, hey, you are pre-approved up to this number of home that you can afford essentially. So
And is that typically based on like your salary? Like they'll take your salary. They're maybe I don't know if you have to disclose savings or different things like this. Like how do they determine that?
yes. Yeah, exactly. So depending on how much of your loan you're putting down and how much principal you're getting out of a loan, there's a lot of factors that go into it. So I had a buyer recently. We bought a home on the east side, and he was a little curious before as to, hey Diego, like what is my monthly payment gonna look like? Like he was a very finance oriented man and I respected it because that's what the numbers are, that's what it's about. It's more than I'm gonna buy my dream home. It's wow, I have to sit in with this payment for 30 years. And I have to make sure that I'm confident I got a killer deal on it. Um, right? So this how I would address your credit score question is first time homebuyers have special incentives between FHA programs, which you can get in for as little as a 580 credit score.
So what is
But
that?
that
What's an
is the bottom
FHA?
line.
What's
Yeah.
FHA?
So thank you for asking. So there's essentially 4 to 5, to my knowledge, there's definitely four different types of loans that you can essentially assume a property with. So or ways.
Hmm.
Let's break them down. So the first one is our dream scenario is, hey, I have this cash saved up. I've been working for so long or so efficiently that I have this cash in my bank account that I can buy the price of this home for. And you're willing to put it down liquid, and essentially you can just buy the home outright for either what it's listed for, or typically a cash buyer that's going to be able to put up all the money and not have any what's called a contingency, is stuff that the deal can fall apart on, of a lender giving
Hmm.
someone a loan, making a qualification on, are you working this much? Do you have X months ahead of your payment saved? And there's a bunch of financing contingencies that can let a deal fall through, unfortunately. But you can either buy it cash or you can use different types of loans. So there's conventional loans, there are FHA loans, there's USDA loans, which is essentially if you buy in certain agriculturally incentive part of the land,
Hmm.
certain lenders are going to give you more money to attribute to the expansion out there.
Mm.
But FHA, VA, conventional, and USDA are the four that come to my mind. And VA loans are for veterans, and they get really good low rates that are assumable across the country, especially in a city like Tucson, where
Hmm.
Davis Monthan and a bunch of veterans reside. Um,
That's true.
but yeah, different types of loans have different entry level requirements and essentially um, pre-qualifying barriers to essentially getting the money.
So
So
an agent like you would help I assume the buyer find out which loans they need, or
exactly.
are applicable for. Um, is that?
Yeah, I think how I would point that is a buyer would come to me and say, "Hey Diego, I want to buy this house." And I would tell them, "Hey, like I understand and I'm super excited for us to go get this house and start our shop. But of course the first step is getting pre-approved." So I would connect to, like I was saying, either a mortgage lender or a mortgage broker. And the mortgage broker shops across different companies of lenders. So it actually might be more advantageous, but it just goes to say that I've got connections to help people shop the rates and find the lowest lender incentive without some sort of markup, because there's a lot of that in the world. And it's important to shop and know your options and know you're getting the best deal. Narrowing down your options is how I like to explain home buying in general.
That's true.
But yeah, like I said, it's as easy as connecting with a preferred mortgage lender or broker, having a 15 to 20-minute conversation about, hey, this is my, whether it's your hourly wage, whether it's your salary, whether they essentially go over all your income and assets and debts, what you're spending, and they'll approve you up to X amount of money that you can afford in a home payment, and that translates to over 30 years, how much home can you afford? And they give me that number that helps us shop and narrow down what you can afford.
I see. Okay. And then, so I guess one of the big questions is, you know, knowing how much money, how to determine what you can buy. Like, is now even a good time to buy, or should we wait? I don't know. A lot of, especially where I'm from, Tempe, the home prices, dude, it's like 800 to 1.8 million is
Oh
800K
yeah,
to 1.8 million near the campus, and these homes aren't even that big. It's like a one-story little townhouse home, 1.8 million. It's like it's absurd. I don't know. So I don't know. What do you think? Is it a good time to buy? What are your thoughts on this?
yeah. I think specifically around that Tempe area, like you're describing, you said you're a student. I know you go to ASU for a few years now,
Yeah.
and myself being a U of A student as well. I'm familiar with how university properties really impact home valuations. So that I'd really have to look up the Phoenix median home price, but they would definitely be inflated around the university, because one of the main factors that goes into the valuation or pricing of a home is location, location, location.
Hmm.
That's exactly what they say is essentially it's a university property, it's a highly occupied space, and those property values might be inflated rather than the median home price. But back to your question, remind me,
It's like,
it was about
is it?
home
I mean,
valuations.
is it even good to buy
Oh, it's a
now?
good time to buy. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. At the moment, right now, I believe a 30-year interest rate is somewhere in between 6.5 to 7%, which people are going to perceive as high because just 5 years ago in COVID, people were getting insane rates. Homes were selling like that with 60 offers because of the COVID crash that essentially led to market uncertainty that lowered interest rates and was trying to incentivize people to buy homes because essentially for the same price of home, your percentage of interest rate can make $100, like $100,000 difference on your home sometime, like as far as payments monthly, which really is a big factor in the situation because you don't want to sign up for something that you can't afford.
So you're saying
That's how
the
people get their
interest
homes
rates,
foreclosed on.
the interest rates right now are like 6 to 7%. You're saying for,
Yeah, yeah,
wow,
which is perceived as high.
yeah.
But I think that I like to communicate to all buyers that regardless of a high interest rate, there's a really funny rate or a funny lingo in real estate. People say date the rate, marry the house. So if you have this beautiful house that you see in front of you and it checks all of your boxes, you're not satisfied with your current place, it's too small, your dog needs a backyard, in-law mom is moving in, whether you need more space, upsize, all these problems and that lead people to buy a home, you have to analyze that and understand, hey, if I have this dream property in front of me,
Hmm.
is it worth it to me to pass up on it because I'm going to pay this higher rate temporarily when I like to communicate to people all markets are fluctuated, whether it's a stock market, whether it's a real estate market, whether it's bond markets, like all markets fluctuate up and down. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue paying rent or living in your unsatisfied, less than perfect situation, or would you rather start paying this temporarily higher rate, living checking more of your boxes, living to your standard. Ideally, like investing in yourself, betting on yourself. That's how I like to frame it to these people.
So
Not to be too salesman-y.
you're saying this higher rate of interest is a correction because of COVID.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's just a normal market fluctuation. I don't think it's as a result of any event. There was a drop in a result of COVID, and now the markets have ever fluctuated since. But there's a lot of factors that go into it. The state of the world right now between the U.S. economy. I don't like to get too political. I don't associate with either side or talk about that with my clients lots.
Hmm.
But I do like to communicate the idea that all markets are fluctuating and they're always going to go up and they're always going to go down. And there's a Warren Buffett principle that says, like, you have to buy when other people don't want to buy and sell when other people don't want to sell. And that's essentially, um, it's like a principle of risk and investing. Like,
Hmm.
it's an axiom of risk within investing. If you are buying properties that people are not buying and are, well, rather low incentivized,
Hmm.
all markets are fluctuating and that will change in the future eventually. Um, really just depending on the world and conditions. But I think the dilemma really is would you rather stay in your situation now and maybe pay no living is free, whether you're renting or living with your family still. No living is free, whether you're paying their electric or rent. Would you rather be stuck in this less than perfect situation or be stuck with a worse payment potentially for a little bit and refinance 6 months in the future and be in your dream home? Like
Right.
lots of
I
things to weigh and lots of factors.
I'd rather live in my dream home than this apartment near ASU. So maybe I'll
Yeah,
pay the six
I'm
percent interest rate.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, you know. I that also goes to say within investment properties. So when people think of their homes, people think of residential single family home residences, which essentially you buy them, people live in them for I think the average time of living before people sell is like 8 years, but you get 30-year loans on them. Some people live in their homes their whole lives. So it really ranges. But people live in there. That's where their family stays. That's where they go in and out. That's where they get ready for work and cook breakfast and make memories. But there's another world of real estate that more investors lean towards. That you can go into multifamily, you can go into commercial, and that's where interest rates and another word called cap rates really come into play, and that helps multifamily valuation change.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, you're talking about this high 6 to 7%
Interest rate.
interest rate
Yeah.
exactly, which correlates to like higher cap rates. As interest rates go higher, cap rates go higher, and a cap rate is essentially a ratio of how much a property is producing, specifically a multifamily or commercial investment property that's giving you rent income. You're leasing it to tenants to essentially offset your mortgage payment. And cap rate is a ratio of how much a property is producing to how much it's costing you um, on a house basis.
Hmm.
But how interest rates correlate to that is as a property is producing, um, let's say $50,000 a year, um, there is a formula that you can decide the valuation of a property that's used in all of these MLS listings. You guys do the math yourself if you don't believe me. Look at how much the property is producing net annual gross income over a year. And there's going to be a cap rate listed below that, which is, again, a ratio of how much the property is producing to what they have it listed at and what it's going to cost you. And the property's production annually divided by the cap rate is equal to the value of the property and probably what they have it listed at or around.
Hmm.
Check it yourself, look around these investment properties, and the opportunity within that equation is, hey, if we're dividing our annual rent income by, let's say, 6 to 7%, um, dividing by a bigger number is essentially going to net us a lower return because we're dividing it into more pieces. So if you divide it at a lower interest rate, let's say the same property is producing $50,000 a year, but is at say half the interest rate. I want to do the math for you guys really quick, just to show you guys how significant the opportunity is within this. So we're producing 50,000 a year, and let's say the property right now is at a 6 to 7 cap within multifamily. So I'm going to divide it by 0.06. And I would say a property producing $50,000 a year at a 6 cap right now is around $833,000 in valuation. So let's say that 6%, who knows what could happen to the world, but as markets ever fluctuate and you get over like, is it a good time now? And you think, let's buy high and or buy low, sell high, but
Right.
it's really buy high on the rate and pay off the increase in valuation. So look, you're producing the same $50,000 a year. And hopefully in the future, as the rents have fluctuated, you've even increased this. But for this sake, we went from 833 to, let's say, even a half point drop to 5.5 times 0.055. Oh, wait, I multiply. 50,000 divided by 0.055
Hmm.
is 909,000. That is $50,000 increase, or what? It was 833.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a 70 to $80,000 increase off of a 0.5% change in the cap rate, and that's directly correlated to interest rates. So the message here is buy multifamily producing properties that are selling at a higher cap rate and interest rate correlatingly. And as the markets are going to fluctuate as they always do, when it goes lower to even 0.5%, like it's percentages, you guys. It's all about scale. And there's a lot of opportunity between housing valuation and interest rate fluctuation.
So what? So okay, with
That
these
was a lot.
homes, that was a lot. I guess
That was a lot.
I have some clarifying questions.
I love the share.
So okay, the interest rate, it'll go down to like 2%, say in 10 years, or no, I'm
Mm,
not
I don't
as
know if we'll ever see below three is a problem in the
okay.
future. That's what I've heard in the brokerage, but who am I to say?
So say it goes to 3% in the next 10 years, whatever. Um, does that mean that that property that you were showing that's 833 at 6%, all of a
At a six
sudden
cap, yeah.
all of a sudden goes to like
Yeah,
what?
let's find out.
Uh,
50,000, you're talking about 3%?
is that 2.4 million or 1.6
1.6.
million? Okay.
Yeah, right. That's double your valuation.
So
But
the
that,
50 the
given
50
that's a very significant change. That's a half in the cap rate.
does
That's,
is
I
the
don't want to say
50,000
unrealistic.
the 50,000 is what exact? That's how much
Yeah,
you're
so essentially multifamily properties, you have your single family residences that hold one family, one people, one tenant. That is you paying your mortgage rate essentially
right.
and living in it. Or you can buy a multifamily property and either you can live in one of the units. So multifamily is 2 to 4 units
Hmm.
because commercial starts at 5 plus, but anything 2 to 4 units, duplex, threeplex, fourplex, is essentially multifamily, and that's essentially part of what I have expertise under my license and can shop rates for. But owners can either live in one unit or rent out the other ones, or essentially rent out their units. And based on how much you are renting at full occupancy, if you can keep tenants in there at a good market rate, that is your net gross income for the year. Is if I keep this full and if I rent my tenants out of the market rate, I make my say $50,000 a year.
Oh, you're saying they're paying off like the lease or whatever, and they're paying 50K by in a year or something like this.
You you're an owner. You're a
Say
buyer.
I'm
You
the
just
owner.
bought
I'm
this
the owner of
multifamily.
the
You
yeah,
just bought this multifamily property. You bought a duplex,
right.
and you're renting it out to two people. You listed it on Airbnb, and you rent it out at I think that 50,000 is off of like, let's say you're renting out a
It's like
duplex
it's like
at a
almost
thousand a unit,
it's
so that's
slightly
two
more than
thousand a
four
month.
thousand. It's slightly more than $4,000.
No, let's say you're renting them at 1,000 a month. That's nothing.
Oh,
So
that's okay.
depending on the size of it, you can change it, and you're getting two units. That's 1,000 each. $2,000 a month times 12 months is $48,000. So that's why we're using a number off of 50-ish. Is let's say your
Right.
duplex is producing that much gross. But the thing is, the number off the valuation that I was doing the calculations for, that's the gross amount, as if you keep it full. But the thing is, that's not the reality sometimes. Is tenants have problems, people leave, things break.
Hmm.
You have to be ready for capital expenses. If you don't have time to take calls and fix stuff, you have to pay a property manager, a capital expenses. Let's say someone's roof breaks. Like these are all things to take into consideration.
So
And
are you calculating the 50,000 based off of? I know that you use that to calculate the price of the home, but do you actually reverse that calculation and get the 50 from the 833? Like because how do you determine how much you're going to charge someone per month? Um, I guess
yeah,
which number comes first? I guess I'm curious. Do you just decide charge? Let's just charge them whatever we want for this first month, and if they pay that, okay. But if or is it more like this is generally the amount that the home is worth right now, and let's calculate the monthly expense, the monthly rent from the interest rate, or how do you derive each
yeah.
number?
So I think that that's two separate equations. So I think the first step in like what you're saying, does the egg or the chicken come first?
Right.
Um, I would always argue the chicken, by the way. And the chicken, the first thing in the process is essentially, okay, I'm looking at this multifamily property that I want to buy. How much can I rent these units out for? Let's say the property has like two units at 800 square feet each. You can rent them for the 1,000 a month that we were talking about, based off things that have sold in the area.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you use a realtor to run comps for you, and I can look at different properties around the area, all around Tucson, all around the world, and see, hey, what are they renting for in the area based off the size and how many people are buying these? Like, is it a real market rate? Are people paying for this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell you essentially, hey, I think you can rent this unit out for this. This is what its market rate is based on the size and location. And we come up with our 1,000 a month for each unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they live in there for 12 months and plus, ideally, but we do it on an annual basis. So let's say, perfect world, you get your 48K. Going into that, we deduct our operating expenses, whether it's property management, capital expenses, tenant improvements, all this good stuff. That comes in the unpreparedness of buying a home. Um, that's also why I use an inspection before to know everything that's wrong with the home, and you can negotiate with the seller to get some of it repaired.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so use comps to find out how much you're going to charge in rent, essentially, and then based off your gross amount, which turns into a net amount after paying your operating expenses, you take your net amount of rent that you've calculated and are projecting, hey, if I can keep tenants in here, I can have this much amount in profit and net at the end of the year to attribute to A, the mortgage payment, and B, my pockets. Um, you take the net amount and you're going to divide it by essentially the cap rate to get its value. And you can
Right.
calculate cap rate based off, again, just market rates is why you run comps with the realtor. And you can also reverse engineer it like you're talking to. Um, let's say you're a seller and your property is worth $500,000 and you know it's operating at a four cap, then you can essentially reverse engineer how much gross or net income the property is producing a month.
So
That's a lot.
yes. I
It's
mean, I do understand what you're saying now. I needed clarifying, but
yeah.
one thing I'll say is okay. So say you have built up a credit, okay, a credit score.
Of at least 580.
How do you? Oh, is okay. So how do you know what credit score is? What do you need to buy a home? Like, what is
Yeah.
the? And can you say, okay, say you have a decent credit score, but your job isn't paying that much? Will you still be able to get a loan that can help you, or is it explain this stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of financial incentives and factors to consider when going into a home, because it's not about, hey, this home is listed at 300,000. I'm going to pay up 300,000 and use some of my loan and get in there, and it'll be all good, right? It's not as easy as that. We have to think about a lot of things within a transaction between when we initially meet each other and sign our contract and essentially commit to working with each other, then you're off the hook until we decide to start eventually seeing homes. There's your gas. And then eventually, once we get something under contract, we negotiate a proper offer and we get our offer accepted. Then we have to pay for an inspection. And depending on the size of the home, it ranges from at honestly 600, at least 600, $700 to upwards of 1.5 to 2 for some higher scale, high end properties based on the square footage. So it's important to be prepared for that. Sometimes a buyer can be offered to pay for an appraisal. It's also negotiated between the buyer and seller who pays for the home warranty. And there's a whole list of closing costs that essentially some are automatically liable and some on the buyer and some are automatically liable on the seller. But there's lots of negotiating to do in a real estate transaction between these closing costs. And it's important that you know that you're prepared within your pockets and within going into the transaction that you're ready to buy a home. Now, as far as that preparation, you need to be really in touch as a buyer with your lender. Your lender is going to essentially have that conversation with you and assess, hey, what is my credit score? And like you were saying, like, is my job, regardless of what it's paying right now, like, what can I afford? They'll have a 15, 20-minute conversation with you, analyze your assets, your debts, your income, your credit score, and they can tell you, A, how what we can either afford today, or B, all lenders will be able to connect you in a credit repair plan to increase your affordability and essentially rates. All those factors, whether you get an increase in income, increase in credit score, or a change in your debt to income ratio will impact how much home you can afford. And it's really important for you to be on the same page with your lender as to what rate am I getting? What am I paying? Am I prepared for it? And is this ready for me long term?
Sure. And
Does that
then,
make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. How? Okay. So, okay, you get all this information from your clients. You know, you've kind of they first they you meet them, and you kind of know their goal, what type of home they want, whatever it is. How
Consultation
long?
is important.
Right. How long does the whole home buying process usually take?
Yeah, that's an important question. It definitely depends on every deal. Every deal is unique. Every buyer has their own circumstances, and every seller has their circumstances that essentially need to be met and negotiated through this process. But as far as how much time does it take to buy a home from initial consultation until closing day? I've seen property close in as fast as 7 to 14 days if they're cash buyers, as is. Some people will waive an inspection if they get a property at a good enough price, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, but I would say the standard transaction, essentially for first time home buyers, is who I'm trying to cater this audience to. If you're going to buy, or well, actually, all buyers, I don't, excuse me. But if you're a first time home buyer, um, you have to probably consider getting a loan and what is your financing going to look like? What is this payment going to look like? And all lenders, I think it's a law ever since, or I know it's a law, forgive me, since the 2008 financial crisis and housing crash, and people were going to foreclosure because lenders were giving deals without strict underwriting and they were letting people take over these payments that were more than what they could afford.
Mm-hmm.
But thank God we've learned since then. And lenders won't approve you up to spending more than 40% of your gross monthly income on a home payment. So that's
Sure.
something to think about is a lender will tell you how much you can afford and they'll tell you your max high limit of, hey, you can buy $500,000 home with your income and credit score and this. And you can either say, hey, okay, like, yeah, I think I'm ready to shop with Diego and let's figure out homes from there. Or you can say, hey, Mr. Lender, like I was actually hoping I could buy something 6, 700. Like, what can I do to improve this? And that's a conversation we can have also. I'm not here to force people to sign contracts or buy homes or write checks today. It's all about what is the right timing for you, what is your situation, how do you know you have the best deal, and feeling confident that you're going to be in a safe spot and with the best deal that I can provide for you for the next foreseeable 8+ years of your life.
Sure. And well, so when you were talking, you earlier, you briefly discussed inspections. You know, you talked about how
Yeah.
in the with the family house that you're renting, say, to determine how much you're gonna
Yes.
make them pay for rent. Um, there's some things will happen maybe during the inspection process. So explain. So okay, listen, I'm going to this house. This is the case in a lot of Tempe homes, to be honest. Like
Yeah. Tell me.
you, like these homes. Like a friend of mine, he lives in one of the neighborhoods near the campus. The home's probably like 800, 900K.
Right.
You go in the home, and it is not it, bro. Like you go
What? It's
in,
run down?
it's run down. It's like the backyard is nasty, and they didn't even do this stuff. Like it's kind of just like accepted that you're getting this house, you're gonna be paying rent, and this is the bet. You know they'll pay. I think the company might pay for, um, maybe fixing things. I don't know, but like so you go into some house like that. So why? So I guess a home like that, which is like 8 to 900K, with all of these problems, like how does so say someone wants to come in and buy that home, or say I want to come in and pay rent. If I'm inspecting this place, and I'm like,
Something comes up you don't like.
yeah,
How do you
so like,
navigate that?
yeah, what's the process?
Yeah. So that makes sense. I think it's different from a renter tenant perspective. Is you're describing your friend, does he rent this place or does his family own it?
No, 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 he rents it.
Okay, that makes sense. So essentially an inspection process would only be liable on the owner, the person with the name on the title, the person that bought the property. And from what you're describing, it sounds like really run down and like distressed and like almost not livable. But if they're renting it out, I'm sure it's livable. But
Yeah, it's
as far as
livable.
the
Yeah, but like
but
it's
it's
like, well, I mean, okay, so it's like everything works, but like I don't know how to explain it. Like a lot of things are okay. So
bad
the
landscaping,
fence
is
is
it
destroyed.
cosmetics?
Yeah,
Okay.
cosmetics. It's
Okay.
fencing's destroyed. The like the frame to the door to the backyard is like bashed. It's like a lot of like
Yeah.
stuff is just like kind of messed up, and I don't
That
know.
is stuff that a home inspector would call out.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's definitely a great question. I think how I would explain that to you is it really all the tenant improvements, the condition of the home is more liable on the tenants to uphold it, but the owner to maintain it and put up the check and find the contractor to fix this stuff and then make it a livable place. But it's where the inspection comes up is this owner when he bought it X years ago. Um, he goes in there and he worked with his realtor to run market comps and make up an offer that was good for him and made sense. And essentially, the day that you get your contract, your offer accepted, whether it's with um, a multifamily property, a single family residence, essentially any property that you are going to go in and take title on and live or rent out to tenants or people you know, get your name associated with, you want to have an inspection on. You guys, home inspectors will walk into a property and they will develop a 40 plus, I've seen 80-page reports, I've seen 100-page reports of taking apart this property from top to bottom, from roof to foundation, and even below. They do like sewer scope inspections. Um, but notably, it's always important to get a general home inspection, a termite inspection, a sewer scope like plumbing inspection, a electrical like HVAC inspection, sometimes solar if you have that on the property. It's really important to know every single thing about the condition of the home because the inspectors are the ones that are trained and licensed to know the code and what building standards are and how to stay safe within your property and your home. So they develop this report that you get. So hey, I'm so happy I got my offer accepted. Now what? We go in here, we work with an inspector. I work with pillar to post inspectors. Shout out them, free promo. But they're my trusted people. They've never done me wrong. And every single time I work with a buyer, I'll advise, hey, we need to go get an inspection because there's an allotted inspection period time after you get your property accepted. So there's multiple steps. And when you're buying a home, we have to sell the house multiple times before you actually get the closing. The first time you sell the house is to an inspector. You, as a buyer, go in there, you pay for your inspection, you get this big list of, wow, here's everything wrong with the property. And sometimes it can be intimidating, but it's going to be important for you to read over all these pages of your report, scan through it, bring up anything that concerns you to your realtor, and maybe they would advise you on essentially how significant the problem could be, what problems it poses long term. Your realtor is going to have some sort of education about the house and the condition of the home to advise you, hey, should we request for the seller to repair this? Should we offer should we offer to fix it ourselves? Should we not even bring it up? Or should I just ask the seller for money for me to fix it afterward in the property or afterward when I own it? But essentially that's the inspection period is 10 plus days after you get your offer accepted for you to inspect the property, get your report, figure out what's wrong with it, and develop what's called a BINSR, is a buyer's inspection and notice of seller's response. So the buyer will inspect it and develop the BINSR is a request of, hey, Mr. Seller, I saw everything in the inspection report, and you have to provide the inspection report. Say, here's what it says. And out of all the things that they pointed out, I would like to request for you to either fix X amount of things on this report or give me a credit for this property work that I'm gonna have to do after we close. Or a buyer can just say, hey, the property's in really good condition. I don't want to request anything from you. Let's get this deal done.
And they're requesting from the seller or the who? So you're saying it's a buyer's report. So you're essentially saying that like
Due
the buyer
diligence.
has to buy the property and fix it themselves.
So there's a lot of steps in this. Your buyer is so at this point we've gotten pre-approved.
Yeah.
You've agreed with a realtor, myself, on hey, I'm gonna work with you for this time, and we've seen some homes. You found your realtor, you found your home, you've negotiated an offer using my essentially market data, CMAs, sold to list ratios, all the good stuff that I can advise you on in the area, and you get your offer accepted, and it's wow, awesome, my offer is accepted, I'm going to buy the home, I'm going to close on it. But no, that is the first step in essentially the home buying process is, hey, I got, or well, second or third step somewhere in there, I'll make a more clear list eventually.
Yeah.
But wow, I got my offer accepted, but now I need to find out what's wrong with the home in an inspection. And I have this second negotiation essentially with the seller is, hey, I have my offer accepted and I do want to buy your home and I just paid for my inspector. I'm really responsible and I went in there and I found out everything that's wrong with the property.
Hmm.
And you go through a second negotiation sometimes, unless they waive it, of hey, here's what's wrong with it. Can you fix some of this? And essentially, you pitch this as a buyer, and the seller can either choose to do some of the repairs, none of the repairs, or all of the repairs. And based on that, the seller will respond, say, hey, I got your inspection reports. I see you've requested these things to be fixed, and I'm going to do some, none, or all of them. And then the buyer has a final decision on, okay, I have the property secured under contract at this number that I feel confident I got a killer deal in. I've seen all the stuff in the inspection report and what's wrong with the property, what it could come up in the next few years. I know what the seller is willing to repair, whether it's some, none, or all of it. Now I have this final decision on, okay, do I still want to buy this property if the seller's going to fix this stuff, or do I want to walk away? So that's essentially the second inspection period, or the second negotiation is offer negotiation, inspection negotiation, and from there it's close to smooth sailing because that's where 90% of deals fall through is in an inspection period
So
negotiation.
they don't say the seller is going to fix it. They don't usually increase the price that the person's going to have to pay.
That's part of the negotiation sometimes
Okay.
because in an inspection period, it's a buyer's due diligence to A, use an inspector to get the inspection report, and B, if there's something significant like a roof issue, an HVAC issue, electric, plumbing issue, you as the buyer are responsible on going and getting a quote from a licensed contractor within that scope of profession, whether your inspector told you something's wrong with the roof, electrical, all that stuff, you're going to find plumbing contractor, a roof contractor, someone in the respective
Right. Do
profession.
you always, so every, I mean, if you're being smart, do most people every time they're trying to buy a home do an inspection with every
Yes,
HVAC, roofing, everything?
yes,
Even
yes, yes, yes.
some buyer, um, just inspected the home like a week ago and they don't like it, and then I come a week later. Am I supposed to inspect it again?
So that is definitely a unique situation. I
Sure.
think that I wanted to touch on the last thought I was finishing up is
Okay.
like yeah, my fault. It'll be fast. But you inspect it and you see what's wrong and using a like contractor within the scope of area,
Yeah.
you're gonna get a quote for yourself as the buyer to present to the seller and be like, hey, like this is how much it's gonna cost. Like, will you take the quote and let's do this? Um,
Dog.
so that can either yeah, she's so cute, huh? So that essentially it helps a buyer break down, okay, how much will this cost? And can I either ask the seller, do these repairs for me, please? Um, or do I would just want the money instead to just
Right.
get this transaction going and closed?
Okay.
Um, but that's essentially that negotiation process. But your next question about inspections and
Yeah, I mean, like, do buyers? Okay, so I guess here's my question. Say like a buyer inspects a home. Okay, they pay for HVAC, plumbing, roofing,
termite, plumbing,
term,
electric, all that good
every
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
They all go through. They quote them. They tell them what the issues are. Whatever. Okay. Say okay. Wow, there are too many issues. We're like a week from now, or they kind of pull out of the deal and they're done. Okay. So that was one buyer who got their report
yes.
from all of those different companies. Okay.
And they walked away because they didn't negotiate.
They walked away.
Okay,
Does
so you come in.
does does the say a new buyer comes? Does the old buyer is there? Do they give that data to the seller so that the seller could show it to the new buyers? Okay,
Exactly.
okay. Well, because
Exactly,
I guess
exactly.
I was curious if like okay, say a buyer goes through all that crap and like gets all this stuff and then leaves, and then a new buyer comes. The new buyer, if they didn't have access to all that data, they'd have to pay for another whole inspection when it was only like a week or two. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really good question. It actually brings up a lot of avenues of how to prepare your home for sale and how to essentially address a fallen through inspection period within a transaction. So
hmm
essentially getting an inspection, whether you're going to list your home or whether you're buying a home, is essentially really beneficial in both ways. Whether you as a seller want to inspect your property before you put it up for sale. So essentially when you price your home, there's a lot of things that go into it. There's three big factors that go into it. And first, location, location, location. Second, you have to think of size. And third, you have to think of condition.
hmm
Location, size, condition. That is essentially the factors that go into pricing your home. Now, when you're doing this, selling your home, I'm sitting down with you, reviewing the condition of the home and looking at factors or comparables around the area. And we come up with, okay, how much is this going to like affect valuation? How old is your roof? Like, how can we adjust the pricing off of that? Or you can put up that $600-ish of inspection and you can know everything that's wrong with your property, maybe even get quotes on how much it is to fix it. And you can adjust your list price based off, okay, this is what the market rate is for a perfectly conditioned home. And I'm going to subtract my 5 grand in roof repair costs. And now I'm going to say, hey, I have inspection reports. Look at this. I'm listing my home in a market rate and I'm not going to accept offers lower than that. And a buyer can choose to pay for an inspection to verify what they what the seller is presenting
right.
by pricing their home lower than market. Um, yeah, based on how much repairs need to be done.
Right. I
And
guess that would be an interesting. So the
that would be an option for a seller to do a pre-listing. But the
yeah
situation you're describing is very common and it happens a lot because people will go into a house and they love it and they fall in love and they write an offer and they get it accepted, go in there, inspect it, and there's something big and scary like, oh my gosh, the the roof is leaking or the HVAC is like at the end of its service life and it needs new coolant and all of this is expensive and what is it gonna happen, you know? So as a buyer, you go and get all of this quoted and you know how much it's gonna cost. And sometimes it's intimidating and you have to ask for a lot from the seller. And sometimes sellers either get offended or are not willing to put up money for that. And that situation, like you're talking about, that first buyer that falls through an inspection period, They went and paid for their inspection. They got all their reports and they send it to the seller with the Binzer document as their second negotiation. And now the seller has these reports. They don't end up agreeing and it's tough and the seller goes back on the market. But now, hey, Mr. Seller, I have these inspection reports in my pocket and we can see exactly what was essentially wrong with the home as far as like roof, HVAC, electrical, like big high ticket item repairs, things that are not going to be too cosmetic or value affecting. Um, and you can say, hey, they gave us quotes on how much it's going to be to fix it. We can either adjust our list price or tell these people in advance, hey, we have inspection reports. You guys can waive your inspection. And yeah, I think they're usually only valid for like 30 to 60 days because homes change that fast.
Really?
But it is, yeah, yeah. But especially if you're going to end up adjusting your list price based on, okay, we have these inspection reports, like let's drop it 5 grand and not deal with these inspection negotiations next time. Um, that could be a good strategy to avoid the, it's really a high tension time in a inspection period negotiation. So it's important for you to either as a seller have the leverage by doing your inspection before, or as a buyer paying for your inspection, knowing what's important to you and requesting enough that doesn't offend the seller, but that you are getting a good deal on your home when you move in.
Yeah, this reminds me, I have a friend, an agent in Tucson, and I forget what it was, but like the the buyer found like some problem in some minor, really minor problem, like maybe
Paint chipping,
like a
wood,
slight, yeah,
fascia.
yeah, like a slight chipping of something that like maybe would cost a few $100 to replace the thing, like the kind of, maybe it was a tile that it would have to replace.
Yeah, maybe some wood, who
Like
knows?
the buyer was so stubborn, and the agent that I know, he ended up having to just pay the buyer like $400 for them to just sign the deal and
Keep it
get,
together.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was,
that happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, there's honestly sometimes it's really scary that there's some unexpected costs that will come up in a transaction. That's why it's again, I really praise to my buyers that you need to be like this with the lender that we choose to work with. Again, I have 3+ options that I know and trust and have done business with that can help my buyers shop and find the best rates on the market. But it's really important for you to choose one and be in touch with them and know what are the finances of this situation going to be, what are my credit score implications, what could change throughout the process, just to make sure you are prepared on your end for the finances of it because it's a commitment more than it's a really emotional process and you want to fall in love with your home and be confident that you got the best deal and you're working with the best agent in town. um,
Yeah,
but it's also important to sit with the reality of wow, I'm going to have a mortgage payment for the next 30 years potentially. So
right.
all things to consider, and it's important to shop within your limits and essentially know that you're confident in your deal and your life situation because it's a big change for people.
Okay, you passed the test. You know everything. So now everyone can trust you on this podcast.
Thank you so much, Ethan. This has been awesome, and I appreciate your time.
Yes.
Hopefully, this goes far. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I'm excited. We have a lot of ideas, Diego and I, and I think, you know, you know, our personalities. The first few videos might be kind of rough because we're figuring things out. But I think I think this the um, the format where you can answer questions to the viewers, and when we start getting a lot of viewers, you know, they'll have a lot of questions, and
Yeah, you guys will ask us questions eventually, right?
that's what I'm saying.
There
Like
you go.
I think at some point we could do a thing where, you know, people are asking questions, and we'll just pull up
And we're
the,
answering.
yeah, and we're just pulling up the thing maybe at the end of the stream or something, and quickly answering everyone, interacting with viewers. Yeah, so I'm excited. Um,
Lots of ideas.
and
I
we
like
have,
this.
this guy is very entrepreneurial. Okay, so no, I don't know if he's that way
You're
or
over here for
he's
me.
this way for
Yeah.
me. For me, he's here. So, oh, maybe we're both this way for each other. Whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, it's flipped. But no, it's I'm excited for this, and yeah, I think there's some more to talk about, but we'll leave that for the next episode. I think. Um,
Thank you guys for listening
yeah.
to Desert Deals podcast, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys in the next one. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, guys. Thank